You have a startup idea. It's $1 billion potential thing. It's a future unicorn, but how much is it worth now? 1 million, 100 million, a billion? It's not right at all to see these crazy company valuations when they're starting, right? OpenAI's co-founder raised $1 billion for a company that didn't even exist. Adam Neumann's Flow raised $100 million for this company after crashing WeWork. Your idea is better than all of these, right? It should be worth more. Well, I have seen founders go out of business trying to find that number, wasting hours in negotiations, burning investor relationships over that valuation number. And the truth is that for early stage startups, valuation is actually much simpler than you think. But getting it right is key to not get screwed and not losing control of your company. So let me explain how to value your early stage startup. So the first thing that you need to understand about valuations is that at the early stage, pre-seed, seed, nobody's really thinking about valuations per se. What investors are really thinking about is how much equity am I gonna get in exchange for my money? It's like betting odds. What's in it for me if I invest in this company? And as a founder, well, you're not thinking about valuation either. What you're really thinking is about percentages, right? What percentage of the company are you gonna be left with? Is it 51%? Is it control, right? And I imagine what's in your head is something like this, right? So you're giving your first investor, say 10% of the company. The next investor is gonna get another 10%, but where does it come from, right? Does it come from your end? From whose end? Now, the problem with visualizing your company as percentages is that companies don't exactly work with percentages. In reality, what happens is something like this. This is your company, and it's made of bricks. These bricks are shares of stock. Now, because you own 10 and your co-founder owns 10, each of you has 50% of the company, like in the pie chart. Now, when an investor comes in, you're not giving them any of your shares. That's not the way it works. If you give them one of these shares in exchange for money, you've essentially sold them a share, and then you would have to pay taxes on that money. So no, that's not the way it works. Instead, what the company will do is the company will create, say, 5 new bricks, 5 new shares. So what happened here? Each founder still has 10 shares, but it's not 10 out of 20 anymore. It's not 50%. It's not half of the company. It's 10 out of 25 shares. So each of these is now 40% of the company. Investor got 20%. That's how it would look on a pie chart. Now, the same will happen with every new investor that comes in. New bricks get added to the total set of shares in the company. It's not anybody giving shares to anybody. It's that these bricks, your original bricks as founder, now represent a smaller percentage of the company's total. So again, what you and your investor care about is percentages, right? It's how much you own. But legally, what's happening with the company is you're just creating new shares. The company creates shares and they're sold to the investor. Now, at what price? That is what the valuation is for. We have a whole video talking about bricks and pies. This is just like a summary explanation. If you're still confused by this, you should go watch that video first and then come back to this one. Now, in 2025, the median tech startup pre-seed round was $900,000. That's usually the first money that a company ever gets. So how much equity should an investor get for those $900,000? How much is your company worth? Well, you're a unicorn, right? You're on a path to billions. You even have a financial model that proves that you're on a path to billions. Well, guess what? That's every founder out there. You know, if you don't think that you're on a unicorn path, then you're probably not getting any money from VCs anyway. Each founder pitching VCs thinks they have a unicorn under their sleeve. And if you're building a smaller company than that, again, you should probably be focusing on a different type of investor. At the early stage, your forecasts mean almost nothing. So instead of negotiating and fighting over these numbers, investors mostly operate out of a standard. Most early rounds will translate to 15 to 20% equity. So let's follow on that $900,000 example. If the company valuation is $4.5 million, then buying $900,000 worth of shares in this company would give an investor 20%, right? But how? How does that happen? Investors are thinking about this number, 15 to 20%. The valuation is just what we use to calculate, to reverse engineer that number. But what's really happening in the background is this. When they look at the company, they think that based on what you've accomplished so far, you may be worth $3.6 million. That's your pre-money valuation. And then they're gonna inject $900,000. It's gonna turn into $4.5 million. That's your post-money valuation thanks to the new capital. So if your company is worth $3.6 million and it's made up of 20 bricks, one of these bricks costs $180,000. So with their $900,000 investment, they can buy 5 bricks. Company creates those bricks. That's now 20% of the business. If you want to run this math yourself, by the way, I'm going to link our cap table tool below. You can actually run your own numbers with your own assumptions about the company. But like I said, that 15 to 20% is pretty much a standard for pre-seed rounds. That translates to post-money valuations of 4.5 million all the way up to 6 million. Now, there's something really, really counterintuitive with all of this. And that's how much money you raise affecting the valuation. Because what if you raise $450,000 instead of $900,000? Do you keep the same valuations as before and retain more of the company? No, and that's very weird. I know it's very weird, but the thing is, because the standard per funding round at early stage is 15 to 20%, if you only raise 450K, investors will still want 15 to 20%, which means your valuation is probably about half. On the other hand, if you raise more money, your valuation is also higher. In practice, what's happening here is that, let's say that there's a founder that's based in San Francisco. They need a lot of money because they're based in San Francisco compared to, say, a founder that's based in Costa Rica. So one needs more money than the other to hire a team of a similar size and accomplish similar things. At the same time, the San Francisco founder is probably better connected. Their investor connections have more money. If this founder can raise a $2 million pre-seed instead of a standard 900, well, that means that his company is inherently more valuable. So as crazy as it sounds, in practice, the more money you can raise, the more valuable your startup is. And at least that's the way it works in pre-seed and seed. The typical seed company in 2026 started pitching investors when they hit around 30 to 40K in monthly revenue, which is just short of $500,000 in annual revenue. And you may have heard that companies value themselves based on a multiplier of revenue. And again, even at that stage, this doesn't work because in 2025, the typical seed round was 3.6 million. That's an actual number. Now, if we stick to our 15 to 20% standard, and that still applies here, that means that the typical post-money valuation for seed might be something like 14 million. And if you want to play by multipliers, that's a 28 times multiplier of this startup's revenue. Why is it 28? Why not 30? Why not 25? Because with so little revenue or no revenue at all, valuations need to be based on some form of standard rather than some weird spreadsheet math or some revenue multiplier. Now, what I will give you as a reference is this chart. So look what's happening here. By the time a company reaches seed stage, the typical founder will have diluted to about 56%. That's all founders combined, not just one founder. So let me run this math in our cap table tool to show you how it might look. Okay, so let me first add 5 million shares for each founder. It's gonna be 50% each. Then let's add that first pre-seed round that we talked about, the 900K. Next, I'm gonna add stock options. People forget about stock options, especially founders at this stage. But investors will expect you to set up a stock option pool for your employees. And they will expect you to do that before they are shareholders. That way, they're not gonna be diluted by the shares that you're gonna give to your employees. That's just the way it works. So then let's add the seed round, of course, maybe a couple years after the pre-seed. And let's say it's gonna be $3.6 million on a $16 million valuation. Now, once again, this new round of investors will want you to set up another stock option pool. That's gonna dilute the first investors, the ones you had before, but not this new round of investors. And there you have it. 2 rounds, 2 stock option pools. These 2 founders combined now have about 56% of the company. That, again, is pretty typical. Only really outstanding founders can manage to retain that 75%, that top percentile, and some others might need to shed more than 50% of their ownership by the time they raise their priced seed. But control of the company doesn't depend on who owns more equity. It actually depends on the board of directors. You want people to question you. You want people to challenge you. And at the same time, investors on your team and your co-founders don't want to operate on a monarchy where only one person has the final say. They want this team of trusted people, a board of directors, to decide. Your end game is not control, but selling your company. That means you're going to give away all of your shares, but get paid really well for them, hopefully. Now, I actually talked to a couple of founders that went through this process very recently, including getting fired from their own companies. I'm gonna link that video below. I hope this one was useful, and I think that one's gonna be really useful as well. Catch you on the next one.